Oh, and okay, time to begin. So, welcome, and we have some more interesting questions. This one is even though I practice the sense of myself, even though I practice, the sense of myself is not changing. How can I directly dissolve the idea of self? Well, of course, the idea of self is not always in your mind, otherwise, you wouldn't be able to operate. So, when we when we consider ourselves or other people or trees or flowers, there is a sense that something exists. That first sense that something is there seems to be just inherent in how the world is. But then we have some sense that we have our opinions about what is there. It would not be unusual to disagree with a friend about a particular film, what its value was, and so on. So it's as if you both agree, well, there is a film. The filmness of the film seems like a given of our experience. What is more open is our interpretation of it. So this is where the Dharma understanding comes in more precisely to examine, okay, what is the givenness of the tree or the film? When we have a habit, for example, smoking cigarettes, it is very normal for us to experience that the value of the cigarette is in the cigarette. You see the packet of cigarettes and you want one. They are important, they may be necessary for me. Clearly, they're not necessary for everyone. But in my experience, the cigarette itself is important. This is what it means to have a habit or an addictive turn. One projects a value or an identification into an appearance and then finds it difficult to see, oh, this is a production. What I have produced, that which has arisen due to causes and conditions, seems to be inherent. So when we see things as existing in truth, this is a habit formation. Now, most of the people we meet are going to agree that our perception is accurate. This is a shared karmic perception. And so, moment by moment, there is affirmation of the truth that the tree is out there as a tree. When I was growing up in Scotland, smoking cigarettes was very normal. People would smoke cigarettes in the cinema, they would smoke cigarettes while they were eating. It was just part of life. Now, over the years, with the understanding of how lung cancer develops, cigarettes become much less socially valued. They go from being normal to abnormal. So when we read stories about the great yoginis and yogis in Tibet, we hear or we read how they left their small village and went to live in a cave. In the village, people believe that whether your marriage is happy or not is very important, whether you drink too much or not, and all the other worldly concerns. It is obvious in the village to everyone these are important things to gossip about. But when you leave the village and go and live quietly in a cave, it's unlikely that you have a lot of thoughts about whether your parents' marriage was happy or not. That is to say, that the factors holding particular thought constructs in shape as normal start to thin out. So, dissolving the idea of self or inherent existence is not something that is easy to do. because it seems to be valid. It's just the case. So one thing one can do is to become more aware of how uh, certain aspects of life become very real for some people. That could be a football team, or independence for Scotland or Catalonia. For the people who become concerned with these issues, there's a lot of energy in them. It is obvious to them that these are meaningful things to think about. So then we can see, oh, but it's not meaningful to everyone. And as we've looked before, the objects of our human existence are not necessarily very interesting for birds or worms, but they're important for us. So this is what is meant by a karmic vision. Having the vision to, having the karma to be born as a human being, what unfolds through the human body and its sense organs becomes given for us. There are some birds that have a nest in a bush in a neighbor's garden. And I see these little birds flying very fast. And when they come to the bush, they pull their wings in and they go into the bush. And I keep trying to think, how do they know how to do that? They haven't been to flying school. They just, they do what birds do. Strange for me, but normal for them. So this notion of how things exist is interpretive. That is to say, we take the factors, the potential of the world, and bring it together in a pattern that suits our particular composition. So the actuality is that moment by moment, my construal of what seems given or normal is arising and dissolving. A situation arises and there's a lot of feeling, and we feel maybe very upset by something a friend has said. A conclusion comes in our mind, they are like this. But after a couple of hours, it softens. So by observing these pulsations of how the energy of the five poisons merges into the patterns that are arising, we see that the intensity of what we encounter alters. But when the feeling is strong, they are like this, or I have to do this activity, then it just seems true. And then it's irrelevant. What we don't usually do is go back and think, oh, I was very upset and now I'm not. If that person's behavior was really, really bad, I should never speak to them again. But anyway, I like them mostly. Sometimes they're horrible. So now we see, oh, this is not one person. This person is a site or a situation showing many different aspects. So from the point of view of analysis, we can see that my construct, John is annoying, is not always true. So if I say John is sometimes annoying, that becomes a little bit vague. I mean, what am I saying? Sometimes he's annoying and I don't understand why he's become annoying. Then we see dependent origination. Various factors operate to make this the case. But of course, we can't always analyze situations. So if we are practicing in Tantra, we would say everything which arises is Padmasambhava or Vajrayogini, whatever. That is to say, this is appearance and emptiness. And this has a double edge to it. The appearance is empty of its own existence, so then it can appear quite kind of light and even transparent. But because it is an appearance without inherent definition or self, this offers me the opportunity to fill it with my meaning. because everything in the world has no internal definition, I become the ruler of the world. I am in charge, but I'm also a very busy king, morning to night, working, 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 making this damned world. And if I stop doing this work, then the world is not what I think it is. When you see this directly, you see, oh, that's because the meaning I perceive is not inherent. It's my habitual projection. It's a delusion. Then we perhaps start to see how the six realms of samsara operate. It is the emptiness of samsara, its lack of true substance, that allows it to act as a multidimensional screen on which various kinds of habitual projections can be revealed. And we can observe for ourselves how, for example, in English we say Spain. Yeah, and the people who live in Spain, they are Spanish, and Spanish are Spanish. But the people in Madrid are not the same as the people in Valencia. And probably the people in the north of Valencia are not the same as the ones by the coast. And on the street, my neighbors are not the same as me. And I'm not in the same mood I was in this morning. So our world emerges through our reliance on empty signifiers. So we can talk about the Spanish, but you can't find a sort of regular issue Spaniard. The unifying factor for all Spanish people is the idea of Spanishness. There are different languages and different accents within the language, different dialects. So when we hear all sound is mantra, but maybe if you're on a train in Spain and you hear people talking and you know Spanish, you can think, oh, they're from the north. It is sound which is empty, and that allows you to put your interpretation. If you were from their area, you might be able to even identify the particular valley that they are from. And you would feel, I am simply describing what is there, but you do that on the basis of having the knowledge to project into what is there. And in Dzogchen, we keep our mind relaxed and open. Then we see that patterns are arising and shifting and dissolving, dynamic, interactive, never ceasing. Nothing is established. And therefore, the richness of life arises through the quality of our availability and participation. There is no self. In my mind arise many, many possibilities of interpretation, memory, planning, and so on. These are like colors on a palette if you're painting. There are potential which, according to circumstances, you use to create a particular image. If you were painting on a canvas, you have a more sense of duration of the marks through time. But thoughts and feelings and sensations and sounds are painting in time. So if you stay relaxed and open, the unborn empty mind itself never changes. It has no self you can catch, and everything else is moving and has no fixed self you can grasp. So then you see for yourself that the self is not something to get rid of or to actively dissolve. It is the mode of perception that operates in samsara. Samsara arises from this reifying mode of perception, and this is delusion. So then we can feel compassion for all the people who are strongly committed to their interpretation. It causes so much suffering to believe in the truth of things, because the stabilized concept is always straying away from the immediacy of the moment. So when you're meditating or in your life and you feel a kind of intrinsic sense of, well, I'm still me and this is me, don't do anything. If you take it as something happening to you, you will feel persecuted. How can I be Buddhist when I keep believing in myself? Then the thoughts will just go round and round like a dog chasing its own tail. But if you stay relaxed and open, you will truly find that all outer phenomena and all inner phenomena arise and pass, arise and pass. The self is neither a true entity to be believed in, nor is it a serious problem to be got rid of. It is a delusion. And the delusion arises from ignorance of how it actually is. So then we have a question, when and how to use Phat. Phat we use to disrupt the continuity of reassuring thought. So, for example, to link it to the previous question, if you're caught up in the sense of I exist, and you're in a place where you can make the sound of Phat in a very strong and loud way, then you want to let it arise from your belly and straight out. The sound is coming out of your mouth, but it's as if it's coming out of the top of your head. So with the sound, afterwards, there's a kind of gap. And in that gap, you just stay as open as you can. In a sense, I'm here, but my clothes have come off. The thoughts and feelings and memories I'm usually wrapped in have got blown away. So we are present as simple presence. We're not present as ourselves. That is to say, the cladding of self has fallen off and we're just here. So if you're meditating and you find that the Guru Yoga of the White R is not able to release you from your tension and inner holding, then Phat is very useful to open up a space. But it's a double movement. You need the sharpness of the Phat to cut away, to cut a kind of space in the forest. But then you need to bring the clarity into that gap. It's not about being spaced out. We want to see the clarity and emptiness, or the clarity which is not a substance. So that's how you can use Phat. So then there's a question, devotion to the other merges self and other in non-duality. This is apparently what I said on the bit of Chet Sangpa on the Guru. Okay, devotion to the other merges self and other in non-duality. So in terms of our karmic vision, when you chat with a friend, even if you're very relaxed and at ease and joking and having a good time, there is a subtle affirmation, I exist and you exist. At the end of your time, you say, hey, this was such a good evening. Let's meet again soon. I really like spending time with you. So this is most of our social interactions are either friendly or not so friendly. And both have an affirmation of the existence of self and other. Even if you have if you go into a sexual contact with a person and you have an orgasm, there is maybe a brief gap, but still there is pleasure arising, and linked with that perhaps a desire to do this again with the other person. So when we practice it particularly through Tantra, if we imagine the teacher in the form of Tara or Padmasambhava, we do this because if you see the teacher in their ordinary body, you think, oh, this is a man, or this is a woman, or they are young, or they are old. And these assumptions allow you to hook many different qualities onto that person, which makes them thick. But if you imagine them as Padmasambhava, in the description, there are a lot of details. He has a vajra and a skull cup and so on. But all the descriptions of his clothing and the color of his skin and so on are to be understood in the idea of this is appearance and emptiness, like looking at a stained glass window. So essentially he's like a hologram, something which appears, but you can see through at the same time. So he is like an apparition, like a kind of ghostly form, or as the text say, like a mirage or a rainbow. So when you have devotion to this appearance, you're saying you are important. How you are is how I need to be. You have wisdom, you have compassion, you have power. I am wandering in samsara with confusion and strong emotions. Please save me. What do we want Padmasambhava to save us from? The delusion of ourself. Actually, we also are empty appearance. But we, with our habitual interpretation, solidify our sense of who we are. So devotion to the deity is a means to be returned to how we already are. But in the language of Tantra, we talk about transformation. Turn or transform my limited body, voice, and mind into the pure form of your body, voice, and mind. So you exist, but not as an existent. That is to say, you are present, but present as luminosity. So when we pray, we forget everything else in our world and we just have a focus on the deity. Maybe recite the mantra or some familiar prayer like the 7-line prayer. These are ways of hollowing or thinning ourselves out. Like being a teenager and falling in love for the first time, you can't think of anything else. All the familiar ingredients of yourself get dispersed because you're just obsessed by this one person. So you bring this into the spiritual domain. You are the one and only. So two things are happening. I'm gathering myself together in my focused attention on you. And this gives us protection against the dispersal, which usually comes in our reactive, ordinary mind function. And with my devotion to you, I'm being filled by this, my sense of you. And then when you've done this for some time, you stop the recitation and this light comes from the form of the deity. White light from the Om, red light from the Ah, and blue light from the Hung in the heart. This represents their body, speech, and mind, which is also the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. This light then streams into us, firstly all white, so we are full of white light, then red light, so we're full of red light, blue light. So you can read about the symbolism of this, for example, in the book Being Guru Rinpoche. Then the three lights come together, and now you're full of white, red, and blue light. And this process of these four aspects of the light represent the four initiations, which are the basis of tantric practice. So now my body is full of light. It's not even thick skin on the outside. It's not like a skin bag full of light. It's more like the skin also is like, if you like, glass or crystal. It's just a very fine presence. And then you see, oh, actually it's only light. Then the teacher comes to the top of your head, dissolves into a ball of light, into your heart, and your body dissolves in. And so in that moment, subject and object or self and other are now merged together in non-duality. So this unified ball then becomes smaller and smaller until it goes into space. And then there's only space. And then gradually experience starts to arise, sounds, sensations, and you find yourself moving in this world. Which which world is this? This is a world emerging out of emptiness. Something cannot come from nothing. What arises is nothing showing as something. This is appearance which is empty of self. So unless this basic binary opposition of self and other, subject and object, can be dissolved, you remain inside a dualistic structure. So that's why we do this practice again and again. When we live in our ordinary sense of self, although we know that we have parents, it's normal to feel, well, the basis of me is me. I am the source of me, inside me, coming out of me. This is a belief, a delusion. But as long as you operate from it, you find yourself in this fragmented world of many different things. But when through your practice again and again, and for many people it takes a long, long time, you gradually see, oh, self and other arise together from the same ground. So self and other are pulsations of the energy of the ground. Neither exists in itself. So then as you go through the day, talking with other people, walking and sitting and so on, there's no interruption into your participation as an aspect of the emergent field. When you get a wobble and you kind of retract into yourself, it's not that you actually retract into yourself, but that the retraction is yourself. There is no self, but it's like a concentration of sound. Like sometimes if you're out in the countryside, you hear these military planes flying overhead and they go very fast and they hit the speed of sound and you get this boom, because the force of the plane is causing a pressure to build up in front of them. So that's the same when we have a retraction into ourself. When I'm loose and part of the field, there is no self. There is presence in this moment as this. And in the next moment, I'm present as something different. So presence is, if you like, continuous, yet always different. And the sense of self is actually discontinuous because it's constructed again and again and is pretending to be continuous. It's not that if you dissolve the sense of self, you will go psychotic or you won't know who you are. But you're just here in a very open, immediate, bright way. Okay. So linked with this was we are using the energy of the ego to dissolve the ego. What does this mean? So that's what I was just describing. Devotion is very much like longing. The words of devotion could be applied in an erotic way or in a spiritual way. I miss you. I need you. Don't leave me. I can't live without you. If you forget me, I'm lost. Lovers often feel this. This is exactly we're taking this quality which in our ego self often leads to unhelpful idealization of another human being ending in disappointment. But we take this egoic energy of idealization and take it to Aryatara, Vajrayogini, and say, you are the center of my life. So the text say you should always keep the deity on the top of your head or in your heart. So this is I need you, I need you, I need you. You are all I need. So in this way, you take the energy of the ego and you apply it to the deconstruction of the ego. So here is a more complicated question. Are there natural laws spontaneously arising from the primordial ground? No, because if we use a word like law, law is a human construct. We have laws, for example, against incest. Because culturally, we think parents or relatives shouldn't have sex with their children. Some people might believe, well, that's a natural law. Everybody knows that. But we have in our legal system formalized rules of punishment of people who commit incest. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments, it seemed as if these were the natural laws of God. Not killing. We know we shouldn't kill people, but there's a lot of killing happening in the world. Maybe we need more missionaries and tell people don't do that. But if you need missionaries, then it's not a natural law. It's not inherent, it's not intrinsic. So in Dzogchen, we are always talking about potential. How the potential manifests depends on the how there is participation in the emergent situation. There is this inseparability of these three aspects: the openness of the mind itself, the ungraspable clarity of immediate experience, and how we participate in that, moving through the world, making choices, sitting, standing, and so on. So, in relation to what I said about the dissolving meditation and seeing that everything emerges from emptiness, that is a practice, that is something that you have to do in order to realign yourself with the intrinsic integrity of these three aspects. They're not, we're not artificially constructing these three, but we can't open to them unless we start to remove our false beliefs and practice. So when we really enter into the practice, the clarity of the inseparability of these three arises without dependence on concepts. So if you were practicing in Tantra and you visualize Padmasambhava, you have to remember what he looks like. Because although we say, oh, Padmasambhava is the unity of all the deities or the refuges, Tara and Padmasambhava are not identical. And so when you're practicing with Padmasambhava, you don't visualize Tara. So this is your effort to visualize something. You do your best to visualize, and then you invite the pure form of the deity to come from their Buddha land. And the pure form merges into your practice form. But you can see that there is still a kind of constructivist movement in this. You're making something happen. So that kind of practice they call kerim, or the developing stage or the developing style. But in Dzogchen, we want to have absolutely minimal effort, minimal construction, and then the intrinsic can show itself. And it doesn't show itself through concepts. Of course, if we never encountered the Dharma, probably any possibility like this would never come through our mind. So we need the lineage where we get some instruction, somebody explains to us, points out what you take to be normal is not the truth, and so on. But as the teachings say, this is a finger pointing at the moon. The moon and the finger are not the same. Whatever we can say about the mind and clarity and so on, this is a kind of thin veil. The thick veil is our busyness in our world with our ordinary concerns, knowing who we are, fulfilling our social roles as if they are the truth of our existence. And our Nyingmapa system, we have 9 different vehicles or styles of practice. The beginning ones are starting with our ordinary assumptions. I exist, and the world is quite dangerous, so I have to take care. But as we move up these different vehicles, we have a dissolving or thinning of the opacity of our beliefs. Some of it is direct and some of it's indirect. So, for example, if you take the Bodhisattva vow and you say, I will work in this and all my future lives for the liberation of all sentient beings. Who could say such a thing? James Lowe from Scotland should not be saying such things. Summer is coming. I would like a little bit of free time. You know, if I'm going to save all sentient beings, means no more holidays. Day and night, forever and ever, I've got to be available. So the one who is saying the Bodhisattva vow is a kind of, we say, placeholder, is somehow installed in that place for the one who will be able to do it. It means I want to be able to do it, and hopefully I will be able to do it. So in that sense, the aspiration is so big that it's softening our self-protective notion of what's important. And in that way, it's allowing a more spacious and welcoming possibility of relating to other living beings. And so as we go up through these different levels of practice, the veil or the thickness of my self focusing starts to thin more and more and more. And so the kind of practice that we do has less and less to do with laws and rules. If you become a monk or a nun, there are many, many vows that you have to keep. And in Tantra, they also have certain commitments, samaya vows, and so on. And in Dzogchen, although people present many lists of rules and vows, essentially the only issue is to stay present. Now, this of course is strange because I can say to you like a school teacher, pay attention. I might say, be present. But presence in Dzogchen is not something you can do. It's not a way of managing yourself to be in a particular orientation. So it's that you allow yourself to relax into the presence, which is intrinsic. So I'm not trying to cut through some veil of ignorance to get to the light, but rather I'm trying to relax out of my tensions and preoccupations, which cause me not to be present. They cause me not to be present, although awareness is always present. The ego is a pattern of the energy of the mind. If you fixate on the patterning of energy, you live in samsara. If you relax into the basic openness of the mind itself, then these patterns come and go without constructing a separate self. The self which is constructed is like a mirage. To say there is nothing there would be wrong. It's a mirage. But actually, there's no substance in the mirage. The ego or the self-formation or pattern is here. It just functions through us. To say it doesn't exist at all would be ridiculous. We have our bodies, the way our life functions in terms of how we earn money, who we relate to, and so on. But when we observe how this is emerging, we see that this is empty patterning. This doesn't mean that the world has simply one flavor of tedium. Everything has the flavor of emptiness, but emptiness has many, many flavors of appearance. When you see a rainbow in the sky, even if you are an adult, you tend to look again. Wow, it has an impact, the impact of an empty appearance. So it's the same with everything we see. This is empty sound, empty appearance, but it has impact. We are empty patterning. We're not fixed. We know that when we meet different people we know, we emerge, we manifest differently with these different people. I am co-emergent with you. So there we see, oh, I am empty appearance impacted by how you are appearing. And so these empty forms are in a ceaseless process of mutual influence. So this is not organized by the imposition of rules and regulations. It's like a autopoiesis, a kind of self-organizing system. Okay, then we have, it seems somewhat easier to let go of unpleasant memories, traumatic events in the past, and negative emotions. Why does it seem harder to let go of pleasant memories, joy, and bliss? Oh, that's an interesting question, because it would not be my experience. I think Scottish culture is slightly more depressive than the culture of whoever has written this question. What it means is that however our memory or our personality style registers good events or bad events, this is not derived from some organizing principle, but it is the interface between the balancing of our constitutional factors and what is around us. So we have the balance of the 5 elements in the body. Some people have a lot of wind and fire, and they're very light and quickly responding to situations. Some people have a lot of earth element, if you like, and little access to space. This can arise as a kind of stuckness, a lack of interest in the world, a lack of enthusiasm. Or it can link with the wind element as a will to power and a need to enforce my idea of the proper shape of things. Then we have the 5 skandhas, which would be our shape and form, and the kind of shapes and form that we link with in the world, and how we organize these. The second skandha, feeling, in terms of attributions of pleasurable, unpleasurable, or neutral. And these attributions tend to change through the life cycle. It also gets affected by culture. For example, in Britain, people are very tired of the lockdown. People are longing to be out and to have freedom. I want something more unpredictable, more spontaneous. But in Afghanistan, the American, British, European forces are soon going to leave. And so that situation will become even more unstable and unpredictable. So they would like to have lockdown and security and nothing unpredictable. So I think what we should always try to do is to see how what the patterns that we take to be some kind of eternal truth about ourselves are not very eternal, and to observe the dynamic unfolding of our experience. So if you find it harder to let go of positive experiences, that might be very warming for you. Or the fact that they have actually gone and all you have is the memory, that may be saddening. If you have hope, too much hope, it can be a problem for Dharma practice. The texts are often saying that you should be free of hopes and fears, hopes and doubts, because hope is usually a projection into the future. It'll work out fine, we'll be okay. Well, we're going to die. You could have a happy human life and then you die. And then the wind of karma will take you somewhere, you don't know where. You might not care. You might think, oh, let's see. But if I look for me, if I look around the world, there are many places I would not like to be born. Even as a human being, there are many frightening places. So happy experiences, if they become a kind of belief that life will be okay, is not very useful. And on the other hand, if you're always ruminating about bad things that have happened, then you predispose yourself to become fearful about what will happen, and you don't want to take risks. So in Dharma, we want to find the middle way between these two polarities. So if your tendency is to fixate on happy memories, try to see the causal conditions that gave rise to them. If you think, oh, I'm a lucky person, my life's always been good. Okay, but that's not thinking about the causes which might have given rise to this situation. Because otherwise we think, well, I'm happy, some people are sad, I don't know why they're sad, I'm just happy. So life's like that. Then there is no Dharma, because we don't then see some of the patterns and structures which give rise to the different kinds of experience. Good times come and go, bad times come and go. So if you become aligned with a notion of being kind of sad and a loser and things never work out for me, that's clearly quite limiting. But also from the Dharma point of view, to have the sense, I'm a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, things work out okay, life's good, then that's a little shallow, which is why in the Mahayana tradition we say all sentient beings have been my mother. So I'm healthy and happy, that's good. They're not so happy, but well, that's their luck. Oh, but they were my mother. I am actually connected with them, and they are suffering. Maybe I shouldn't just live in my little happy bubble. Maybe I could open myself to be useful. So again, we see the central point is not to define yourself into a fixed position, but always to see how potential arises out of the uncaused openness of our basic potential. Okay, that is about our time for today. So thank you very much to our translators and to the organizers, and for Pedro and the work that will go on to make this available later. And then we have a meeting next week and soon after that. Oh, have a good evening.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Organizers.
Bye.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Thank you,
Bye.
James.
Thanks.
Bye.
Obrigada, Newton.
Bye.
Obrigada.
Obrigado.
Obrigada, Newton.
Adiós, gracias.
Superb.
James.
Thank you,
See
Milton.
you soon.
Well done,
Thanks,
everyone.
organizers.
Hey.
Obrigado,
Bye.
João.